Yes, and we are back here, My Country with Scott Cannon on Issues and Answers Friday, 92.7 on the FM dial, 1370 AM. That number is 219-885-1371. The number again, 219-885-1371, and this is a very heavy show. You know, not a lot of fun. Not a lot of fun in the first two segments. We talked about racism and racism is never fun to talk about. But as I've hopefully articulated to you guys, institutional racism has a horrific effect on our mental and physical health. Well, first of all, because our mental and physical health is, integrated. Our mind is a part of the body. I mean, I know we sort of are taught to think of the brain as different than the rest of our body, but so much of what goes on in the body starts in the mind. Just as Miss V, Miss Bernadine Parker, and Minister Charles, every Monday here at 7 o'clock on Minding What Matters, they'll tell you so much of what goes on in your body starts in the mind. And the type of mental abuse that we take being a part of this society, that the sort of microaggressions, and I hate that word because so many liberals use it for such spurious reasons, but it is true on some level that microaggressions that we experience day to day in interactions with our bosses, with the police, at the DMV, or just the grocery store, just different very small microaggressions, things that have happened to us in our lives accumulate and have a real degrading effect on our minds and bodies. And this subject actually was brought to my attention a few weeks ago, and I actually saw a Vox article. They do a lot of good work as well about this. They were wondering, because I was wondering this too, because I saw this online. I saw it on Twitter. Some woman asked, I think she's a comedian or something. She asked, wait a minute, y'all gonna tell me that every black woman has fibroids? And I'm like, what's fibroids? I don't know. I'm a dude, and so much of, what's going on with you ladies is like, it's all Greek to me. Okay. Like, exactly. All I know is like you wear lipstick and do your hair. That's about all I know. But learning about this, and I saw so many black women in her comments agreeing with her, like, yeah, we all got fibroids. And so I looked into it, and I found this Vox article that found really something that is very disturbing. 80% of black women are going to develop abnormal uterine growths by the age of 50. 80%. These are called fibroids. Black women also experience fibroids at earlier ages than white women, with more severe symptoms like pain and heavy bleeding. Now, there is a lack of scientific consensus on what's behind this. Now, some posit that it is the result of weathering, which is the gradual whittling down of black people's health due to the chronic stress of racial discrimination, like I just talked about in the last two segments. But the research on weathering is still developing, and as is our knowledge of many of the potential explanations for the racial gap in fibroids. Limited federal funding to support high-quality fibroid research and the lack of black biomedical researchers and clinicians, also a policy decision, has left women with few answers. And these consequences are so great. Again, I had no idea about any of this. 25 to 50% of women with fibroids get symptoms like anemia, heavy bleeding, and pain, according to the National Institute of Health. They may also experience infertility and pregnancy complications at higher rates. Fibroids can be particularly heavy for black women and a heavy burden for black women who are 2 to 3 times more likely to get a hysterectomy for treatment than any other group of women. Now, Dr. Erica Marsh, who is the chief of reproductive endocrinology and infertility at the University of Michigan Center for Reproductive Medicine, said her patients have proposed various reasons for their fibroids, including red meat, hair relaxers, and even too many yams. Actually, yams are good for you. But that hair relaxers thing, maybe that has something to do with it. I actually did the story last year, or was it earlier part of this year, about the lawsuit that's going on. There's actually a lawsuit currently going on where a lot of black women are suing the makers of these hair relaxers because they're finding out that a lot of these chemicals in the hair relaxers have given them uterine cancer. So there may be some truth in what those women are saying. Like I said, the lawsuit's currently, I think it's ongoing. When there is a resolution, I will definitely let you guys know that. Now, Dr. Marsh also co-authored a recent review of studies on the racial disparities of fibroids that determine that there's not one single factor that fuels black women's elevated rate of fibroids. Instead, they concluded that as a result of the social, structural, and political context of the United States, black women disproportionately experience a range of exposures across the life course that may contribute to their increased uterine fibroid incidence, prevalence, and severity. Those exposures include excessive ambient pollution, what we just talked about in the last segment, where we live at. I mean, I can basically see U.S. Steel from right here. Okay, they don't even hire people from Gary for the most part. We're not even being paid for for sacrificing our lives here and having the world's largest, North America's largest steel mill taking up half of our lakefront. 3/4 of our lakefront. What am I saying? The overwhelming majority of our lakefront taken up by U.S. Steel, who doesn't even mostly hire people from Gary. But that's neither here nor there. Also, you also have hormone disrupting chemicals, and as well as elevated stress and nutritional deficiencies. So many of us as black people are deficient in vitamin D. This is what I've been telling you guys during the pandemic. A lot of people don't like hearing that. They just said go out and get the vaccine. Well, guess what? The vaccine didn't stop you even stop you from getting COVID, folks. They said it would, but they lied to you, okay? Because you got COVID anyway. Guess who didn't get COVID? You're looking at them, okay? But that's neither here nor there as well. The fibroid disparity is also linked to limited access to skilled gynecological doctors and racial bias in healthcare, the review stated, which is also a policy decision. Again, these are policy decisions. What our government chooses to fund, Ukraine, 1,000 military bases around the world, the prison industrial complex, not putting more black doctors in black communities. But there you go. Black patients reported that their concerns were dismissed, leading to delays in diagnosis and suboptimal treatments by medical professionals. Fibroids are a multifactorial condition, said Brianna Vanoy, who studies environmental, chemical exposures, and reproductive health outcomes at Ohio State University College of Medicine. Not purely genetic, not strictly environmental. Much of the research on factors associated with fibroids does not confirm causation or that these factors prompt fibroids to grow. Pinpointing how fibroids develop down to their cellular level would help women better manage factors that affect their risk and lead to better treatments, experts say. More research can help steer the conversation away from the tendency to blame fibroids on black women's behavior and put the focus on sustainable solutions. Again, there we go, blaming ourselves for things that are being done to us systemically. Now, here's an overview of what we do know and do not know about what's at the root of fibroids amongst black women. Research has suggested that black women experience fibroids at increased rates due to exposure to harmful chemicals that disrupt human hormones. These toxins, called phthalates or plasticizers, are already associated with other reproductive issues like infertility and endometriosis. We did a segment on that. You can go to my YouTube channel, Scott Cannon WLTH on YouTube. I did a segment about phthalates, PCBs, PFAS, PFAS. I think this was last year. Me and the Rev did it, but you can. It's definitely on there. It's one of the reasons why I stopped using plastic. As much as I use as little plastic as I can use, especially when it comes to eating and heating things up in the microwave. I buy glass Pyrex bowls to eat out of. I use silverware. I try to use as little plastic, especially that I try to not use the sort of Tupperware anymore and heat up the Tupperware. If I've got to use Tupperware, you got to make sure that you throw out the Tupperware once it starts to crack and chip away. Once you start seeing that plastic wear down, those chemicals are getting into your food, folks. That's just what it is. The chemicals are getting into your food, and they are wreaking havoc on your hormones. They are endocrine disruptors. So, like I said, I use glass Pyrex as much as I can, silverware and things like that. But again, these are things that we don't talk about that are environmentally killing us and usually goes under the radar. Now, phthalates are found everywhere, from plastic food packaging, like I just talked about, cosmetic products as well. Yep, I also, when I buy hair conditioner and all that stuff, I try to look for if it has phthalates in it, if it has PCBs in it. You got to look at those things. There's actually some good stuff from what is it? I want to say Carol's Daughter. Shea Moisture, Carol's Daughter, those type of companies, if you look at them, even Motions has the non-PCB, non-phthalates versions of their conditioners. You can look and they'll say on the labeling, no paraben. Right, that's the word I'm looking for. No parabens, because those are phthalates. No parabens, no PCBs, no phthalates, those types of things. So hair conditioners also contain those phthalates, and also devices like IV tubing and catheters. All these plastic devices, a lot of them are leaching into our bodies. The chemicals can be inhaled or absorbed through the skin and mimic hormones. Some act like estrogen, which is responsible for cell growth and is known to stimulate fibroids. Fibroids appear in the uterus after hormone levels rise during puberty and usually shrink as those levels drop during menopause. Everyone is exposed to these hormone-mimicking chemicals daily, but black women experience an elevated level of exposure, Vanoy said. A study published in 2020 that reviews national survey data of more than 38,000 female participants from the ages of 1 to 85 years old, with the median age being 26, found that black women had higher exposure to toxins like phthalates, pesticides, mercury, arsenic, personal care, and consumer product compounds. Again, we're being poisoned as black people in this country. Also, stress. What I've talked about in the last two segments before this. Black women tend to experience higher levels of chronic stress than black women in the United States, which leads to higher cortisol levels, or hormone that through complex biological processes can influence the growth of uterine fibroids. There is limited research directly linking fibroids to stress, but some studies have shown a correlation. One found higher rates of fibroids in black women who have reported frequent experiences with racial discrimination. Take us right back to the last segment. Right there. Another found that fibroids were more prevalent in black women who reported high levels of stress over their lifetimes compared to those who reported no major high stress life events. In Dr. Marsh's 2019 review, she and her co-authors noted a study that found that moderate daily stress and anger squelching were linked to higher risk of fibroids amongst black women. We got to stop stressing our moms out, stop stressing our sisters out, stop stressing our wives, girlfriends, daughters, all these people out. Okay? I know that's hard for us. It can be difficult to isolate stress as the dominant factor. A 2016 research review highlights the relationship between stress and fibroids, but also notes that stress from racial discrimination could prompt other fibroid-generating behaviors such as heavy alcohol consumption and poor diet. Increasing the number of studies and quality of research on racial disparities and fibroids is necessary to make broad societal changes, including reductions in harmful chemicals allowed in our products, Vanoy said. Taking stock of toxic ingredients in everyday products isn't feasible for many people. In the meantime, women can be vigilant about their fibroid risk by assessing their health behaviors against suspected risk factors like diet and vitamin deficiency, and advocate for themselves when discussing health concerns with doctors. Now, here's what we also know. Diet, particularly vitamin D. A few epidemiological studies, I hope I didn't butcher that too much. A few epidemiological studies have found diet and certain nutritional deficiencies are linked to fibroid growth. A 2021 review of fibroid research found that low intake of fruit and green vegetables, lack of vitamin D, and pollutants ingested through food were associated with developing fibroids. Another study found that when women took vitamin D supplements, their fibroids shrank. I've been telling you guys this whole pandemic the importance of vitamin D. Okay, I take it every day. Man, woman, child, whatever, vitamin D is important. It is eminently important, particularly as black people. We do not get enough vitamin D. So many of us are deficient in vitamin D for some reason. Especially if you live up here in the north where it gets cold. You know, we're not in the sun as much as people in, say, Florida or California. But in general, black people have been found to have low vitamin D levels. How specific food compounds lead to the onset of fibroids is unclear, but we do know that for many black women, access to fresh, healthy foods is limited by structural racism. Back at square one. A legacy of white flight and disinvestment in low-income urban areas have left 1 in 5 black Americans living in a food desert, areas without grocery stores or with limited access to healthy food. Again, these are policy decisions. Policy decisions. For years, they told us that we couldn't have a decent grocery store or we couldn't have businesses in our community that served us because of crime. Well, as if you listen to the show, you should know crime has plummeted over the last 30 years. Violent crime. Okay, you look at violent crime in 1995 and you look at violent crime today, it is much lower today. Even in post the pandemic. Okay, Gary will probably never see 130 murders in a year ever again, which is what we had in 1995. Hopefully. Let's just hope we'll never see 130 murders again. I mean, for us now, 45 is a bad year. Okay? And yes, we have a much lesser population, but still, like we have about half the population we had then. Still, if you doubled the amount of murders we had, that'd still be 90. That still would be anywhere near the 130 that we had in 1995 or so. Okay, so what is their excuse for Gary continuing to be a food desert in most places? What is their excuse? When crime goes down, the businesses don't come back. I've talked about here at this station, just in the last decade, we've had the highest high school graduation rates in history. Just a few years ago, right before the pandemic, nobody said anything. Had the lowest teenage pregnancy rate in modern history, just right here before the pandemic started. Nobody said anything. Businesses didn't come back. Still a food desert. Crime goes down, still a food desert. Businesses don't come back. It's almost like it's never been about our behavior. It is about maintaining a status quo that keeps us poor and sick. Just saying, folks. That's all I'm saying. It's something to think about. Now, like I said, we know that black people are significantly more likely than white people to be deficient in vitamin D, which is found in fish and eggs. It is also generated in our skin by sunlight, a process that can be impeded by melanin. There's also evidence that vitamin D may obstruct how estrogen signals cell growth, helping reverse the development of fibroids. Wow, that's incredible. Like I said, we have to start taking care of ourselves, folks. Obviously, America's not going to take care of us for us. And it's going to do everything it can to put as many structural boundaries in our way as possible. As many pollutants in our air, in our water, in our food and everywhere else. But there are things we can do. We can get out there and we can exercise. We can take our vitamin D, our vitamin C, our zinc. We can lose weight and look out for what we are ingesting. We can stop using all those plastic bowls that leach plastics and phthalates into our food, and stop using and all the relaxers that have all these chemicals in them. These are things that we can do. Because like I said, America is not going to look out for us. All right, folks. Later on in the show, I'm going to say happy trails to Mr. Norman Lear, responsible for many of the greatest shows of all time. But before that, happy Abbies!